And then the live stream. Just press live. Let me know when it goes live. It's live? Awesome. It's live for real?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. How's it going, everybody? My name is Joshua Samudio. I'm the editor-in-chief of These Streets magazine. Today we are hosting our first live stream workshop led by Diana Barbadillo. Hey, I got it right. She is a legal observer with the NLG LA portion, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is a bigger thing, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And she'll be going over some basic know your rights for press, media, and visual journalists. So I would like to introduce you to Diana.
Oh my God, stop it. Are we good?
What about the mic?
Where I am?
Oh,
All right.
yeah.
So I'm Diana. I go by D. I'm a legal observer, like you said, with the National Lawyers Guild in LA. I think the most important thing to start with is to understand that the First Amendment does establish freedom of the press, but freedom of the press actually doesn't give you any more rights than the average citizen. It just gives you more protections. So with that in mind, what I'm going to do is go over some basic know your rights about encounters with law enforcement. So we're going to break it down to like 3 different encounters. You've probably had these encounters and they've not been fun, but let's just talk about them. So the first one is consensual. This means an officer is coming up to you, they're not asserting themselves like with sirens, with weapons, they're not coming with any force. Like they might just come up to you and be like, hey, who are you shooting with? Who are you with? So in this case, this is officer initiated, but it's consensual in the sense that you're gonna respond to them. If you're not sure if that's a consensual situation or you're not sure if they're coming in hot or not, the best thing to ask is, would a reasonable person in your circumstances feel like they could just turn around and walk away? And when in doubt, if you're really not sure if an officer is pressing you or not, just ask, am I free to leave? Because they have to answer yes or no. In these cases, you have the right to walk away. You have the right to tell the officer that I just don't feel like speaking with you. You also don't have to identify yourself. As regards to the press, you can identify yourself as press, and even after doing that, you don't have to identify who you are, like your name, show ID. You don't have to feel like you have to stay there and talk to that person. You can identify yourself as press, turn around and walk away if that's your prerogative. So that's just sort of the basics for a consensual police encounter. The second one is if you're being detained, and I know we talk about a lot with like freedom of the press, like can I be there? But unfortunately we're seeing that there's an increase in law enforcement disregarding press passes, disregarding why anyone's there. And so you may face an interaction where you are detained by the police. So law enforcement can briefly detain someone if they have reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. This is pretty broad. Reasonable suspicion, it has to be more than a hunch. It can't be just an officer who says like, oh, I feel like you might be doing something wrong, or I feel like you did something wrong. It really has to be a lot more than that, but they can literally just say, you know, this area is a little dicey. We know people who carry weapons and you kind of look like someone who was carrying a weapon. So they can detain you just off that alone. Even having a press pass might not really help you out in this situation, but it should. If they still detain you after that, that is definitely something to take note. Get that officer's name and badge number. If you're not sure, just ask, am I being detained? What am I being detained for? Those are your questions. Am I free to leave? Am I being detained? What am I being detained for? You should get answers to that. If you don't get answers to that, then you're in a sticky situation, and this is where I hope you have a buddy with you that will start recording immediately, and you start recording immediately as well. The Fifth Amendment gives you the right to remain silent, so even if you are detained, you can say, I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. I won't be answering any more questions. I will identify myself. I will stay here, but that's it. And that could be the end of your interaction right there. Something that goes with being detained is being frisked. So what this really means is they're gonna feel and pat down on your outer layer and sometimes right under your jacket to see if you have what may be considered a weapon. And this is really nebulous. A weapon could be anything. There are laws that say it's a weapon or something that is weapon-like. If they do find something and they can feel it by plain touch, then they have probable cause to search you and your person and anything on you. So please be aware of how these situations escalate. Again, to start at the beginning, am I free to leave? Am I being detained? What am I being detained for? That's sort of how this will progress. And so that would be the second sort of interaction with police. The third interaction, and the one that we're all hoping to avoid, is being arrested. Let's not get arrested. An arrest requires probable cause. This is really narrow. It has to be specific. It has to be something in which they have a warrant. They can only arrest when there's a warrant. They can only arrest if a felony has been committed and they have reason to believe that you committed it, or if a misdemeanor or felony has been committed in their presence. Right now, this might seem like, oh, but I'm pressed. Like, I'm just standing by with the camera. Like I said before, there's been a failure on the part of law enforcement to differentiate in the moment between protesters and media. And so they might stop you anyway. If you're standing in a gaggle of people and they're all protesters, you might get detained as well. They might try to arrest you. In this case, again, try to identify yourself as a member of the press. But if not, know that this is sort of the worst case scenario. In which case, my advice to anyone who goes out there, even members of the press, is to have a buddy who has your name and birth date, and then contact the National Lawyers Guild and we'll help get you out of there. So that's sort of a basic know your rights for any encounter with police. Let me go into police and press. So the reason we went over these basic rights is because, like I said before, members of the press don't get extra rights, you just get extra protections. So let's go into those protections. Journalists covering protests have the same rights as other members of the public to observe, photograph, and record in public places. This is sort of a given. That said, there are some limitations. There's such a thing as a reasonable time, place, and manner restriction. If you're in a public area, the police do have the right to say, I can't have you standing here for this reason. Those reasons have to include you're obstructing people that are coming out. It's not safe for you here, it's not safe for the general public. Again, this can be really general on the part of the police, but it is something that they can enforce. They have to give you an area to stand in, but they might restrict it. The key here is to make sure they're not content restricting. They can't restrict you by saying, I don't want you here because I don't want you recording this. It has to be, I don't want you standing in this position in that area, you have to move to another side. So there is a distinction there between being told to move for a public safety reason versus I don't want you recording that. The protections that you're given as members of the press are that they cannot retaliate for so-called negative coverage. They can't retaliate because they don't like the way you're covering them. They can't stop you from documenting what's happening out there, period. In California, I would also look into the wiretapping laws because you can't record anybody without getting the consent of all parties involved. So even if you're on a public street, if they're whispering and you just have a really good camera or microphone, there might be an expectation of privacy on their part, so please be careful if you're recording folks. Consult attorneys about that if you're gonna use it anywhere. Let's see, so there are also some caveats here. Private property, a lot of protesters are going onto private property, and I know that all of the folks want to go out and document this. Be careful. You can document from the public street outside, but the minute you go onto that private property, you are trespassing as well. So the minute you're trespassing as well, the police do have something to say about that, even if you are a credentialed member of the press. So please be careful. Your best bet is to try to cover it from as public a place as possible. Dispersal orders is another area where having a press badge really doesn't matter. If there's a dispersal order given, I don't know if you've ever heard it after an assembly has been declared unlawful. They use the phrase, you have to leave or you're at risk of being arrested, and this applies to anyone in the area regardless of your purpose for being there. Legal observers, members of the press, you need to get moving. If you stand in one place, even if you're behind the police line the whole time, they can turn on you and say, you need to get out of the area. They don't care if you're a member of the press or not. So you need to get moving. You can be arrested for failure to disperse. And disorderly conduct. Not my place to say, but suffice it to say that if you're going to be out there as a member of the media, You really should refrain from acting like a protester. I know things get heated out there, and I know a lot of people have their hearts in the right place, but you have to maintain your journalistic integrity. Because if you are yelling, if you are getting in the face of police, if you in any way can be mistaken for a protester a protester with a camera, as opposed to a member of the media, well, you can also be arrested for your conduct, because they'll say, I don't really think you're acting like a member of the press. I know that might go against the fact that you have a press badge, but your behavior does matter, and it is something that's taken into consideration by the police. Press badges won't help you if you're yelling at cops. And I guess this is kind of what's really important to people. What happens if police ask to see your photos? Generally, you do not have to consent to this request. You can just say, no, you cannot do this. They may try to coerce you, they may try to force you to do it, but consent is always voluntary on your part. They would need an exigent circumstance in order to bypass your consent, and that is really rare. So in exigent circumstances, you need 3 elements here. Sorry, this is very legally, so I apologize. It's an officer has to have probable cause to believe a crime is committed. They have to believe that you captured evidence of that crime on your camera. And they have to believe that there's a strong likelihood that such evidence will be lost if the camera is not seized immediately. This last one is the most important one, because if you are members of the media and acting as such, there's no reason that you would delete any evidence of a crime. This is the one that you need to enforce. This is when you show your press badge. This is when you go, no. I'm a member of the media. I am covering this. This is not going to be deleted. And in that case, that should be your strongest bet for not getting your camera seized by the police if they try to claim an exigent circumstance. You need all 3 elements, and that last one is your best friend. And then again, if they do seize your camera, somehow bypass that. If you don't have a press badge on you, you forgot it. They still need a warrant to view what's on your camera. So they might take your camera, but they can't turn it on and start flipping through the pictures. And also, this one's super important. In no circumstances can law enforcement go through your camera and delete anything on it. They can't delete it, they can't send it anywhere, they cannot mess with your camera. So this is really, really important. So can they, is there any other way that they can grab your equipment? Technically, no. Once again, if it's not an exigent circumstance, if they're just trying to take your equipment, something I would really just remind them is that this is your work product. It's work product, and work product is very important in the legal world, because it means that if you have this and your intent is to just disseminate the material out into the world, then you're not engaging in any criminal activity. And so just invoke the Privacy Protection Act, and they should not be able to take your stuff. Yeah, so that's sort of the basic know your rights. Once again, I'm going to reiterate the fact that you're protected more, but once again, it's a little crazy out there. We're seeing members of the media with credentials being disregarded and treated like protesters, so please use your discretion. And then I guess let's jump to intellectual property and social media. I'm going to be really upfront about this. This is a gray area. And in recent years, the tides have been shifting, and they're not on the sides of the photographers. This is the Debbie Downer portion of this workshop. Here are the basics. Any pictures that you take, any images you own, that you have, if you took it, you snapped it, you are automatically the owner. You own it. The only exception being if you were on assignment or you have an employer, in which case they own it, but you should check your agreements, have licenses to your work. But there is this Fair Use Act, and this is sort of what gets everybody into this gray area. I hate to say it, and this is just coming somewhat as an opinion, but the Fair Use Doctrine is not your friend. Fair Use Doctrine permits the limited use of copyrighted material, so any of you that own your pictures, you do have copyright rights. But this Fair Use Doctrine says that folks can use your copyrighted material without getting any permission from you in certain ways. The Copyright Act is what kind of defines when and where they can use images of yours, and they can use it. Here are examples of fair use where they don't need to get your consent at all. Criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, research. The most common example, I'm pretty sure every photographer in here has had, is if you ever taken a picture, shot a video, posted it on social media, had a news outlet reach out to you and be like, hey, can we use it? And you say, nope, no thank you. But you see it anyway. It's because it's news reporting. They're gonna invoke the Fair Use Act and say, well, we're news reporting, so we're just gonna go ahead and use your copyrighted material anyway. The Fair Use Act is really not friendly to photographers, and I hate to say it, but that's sort of the trend right now. So I think what might be useful is to talk about social media. That seems to be the platform that a lot of folks are using, especially right now. Let's use Instagram as an example. Instagram is also an interesting platform to talk about because they've been setting the legal precedents recently. So when someone uploads a photo onto Instagram, what happens? You don't lose ownership rights at all. You don't lose any copyright entitlement at all. However, those terms of use to use Instagram, it gives their platform an exclusive sub-license to use any uploaded content, anything you upload. And what that means is that Instagram can license anything you upload to other people, to other websites, the minute you posted it there. And this is really difficult because how else do you get your work out there sometimes, right? And so there was a case that was just decided 2 months ago. There was a photographer, she took this lovely picture. Mashable wanted to use it. They offered her $50 for the picture, she declined. What they did, instead of actually taking the picture and putting it into their story, they embedded a link to the Instagram picture. So it's a link that shows the photo that links to her Instagram. And the way this works is the court decided that because she agreed to the use of terms on Instagram and has a public profile, the minute she uploaded that, she agreed to Instagram having the sub-license. And Instagram, even if there was no actual conversation between Mashable and Instagram, to protect their use of terms, said that they de facto gave that right to Mashable. And the court decided in favor of Mashable and not in favor of that photographer. And this is, this is huge because Instagram's terms of use mirror Facebook's terms of use and Twitter as well. And those are sort of the biggest platforms you all have out there. And that's sort of what's happening is people can get around going directly to you now. They can just put in a link to your Instagram page. And so are there remedies? Not really. There's really not a lot of remedies here. It's sort of a decision that each of you have to make, and I'm sorry I have to put it on you, is to continue to post your pictures or not. There's not a lot that could be done because you all agreed to the terms of licensing. So right now, social media is not your friend either. So not to be Debbie Downer, but there are not a lot of protections given to you right now as photographers. I don't like to end on that note, but if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Damn, that completely distrusts me now that I know that none of my shit's protected.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about what anything we do about that, but I guess the only thing I'm thinking is just sit on my photos that like just sit on the extra good ones, I guess.
Don't post the bangers.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or post them on your website where you have your own
Sergio's already been on it.
and, settings.
Would that
link it to a different platform.
Would that be like a gallery?
So if you posted like on a
website?
gallery, so if you posted in a gallery, you would get around the fact that people, for example, that terms of use. But I'm pretty sure people here with websites know that people pull down pictures, they just save it and repost it without credit. Though in that case, in that case, you can go directly to the person and sort of demand some sort of something from them. But a lot of the remedies people are seeing are photo credit, not so much monetary, maybe photo credit. And sometimes if you don't notice that a picture has been taken for years and years, like I had a friend who didn't know her pictures had been used on some sort of travel website for 2 years, and she's still trying to figure out how to get compensated for that.
Is it different if your profile is private?
There, you have a little bit more leeway if your Instagram is private.
But a verification too as well. Sorry. now we're stacking.
No, I mean, the verification really won't do anything because at the end it's just a check mark. But a private Instagram account is interesting because on the one hand, folks can't embed a link to your pictures, but you still agreed to the terms of use. So if somebody somehow finds a way around that, or is like you have like a mutual, is following you, yeah. And then you come back right around to the same issue of somebody, just pulling down a picture and just not giving you credit. Yeah. Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah. There's many people that are going out to any demonstration, and they're either independent or they work for somebody, or they're just rogue. If they have a press pass and they don't actually have sanctioned by LAPD or sheriff, is there any repercussions that those photographers that still want to be there and are trying to document for the good, but are trying to kind of like sneak their way in?
I'll be honest, for the most part, most of the law enforcement, especially the ones on the front lines, don't really recognize press badges to begin with. Like, they might recognize something hanging around your neck and you might be able to put it in their face. But I think for right now, and this is sort of me sounding a little rogue about it too, I don't think they're really differentiating right now between folks. That said, if a supervisor gets called, they do know the difference and they do know what an actual LAPD and sheriff issued press badge looks like. And I would be careful, because the minute they find out you're not an actual member of the press, like a credentialed member of the press, you lose those extra protections I was talking about, at least in the eye of the beholder as law enforcement.
So I know that there's levels to the press pass too, and maybe I don't know exactly where to get it, but I know that you can get one that allows you to go behind the police line. Do you have any recommendations?
I don't actually know that information about the different levels of the press badges, but I do know that we've also seen folks with those press badges get kicked out from behind the line and right before the action starts. So that's also something of note. I don't have that, but we can get some information and send it out to everybody when we get the information.
Cool.
Yeah. Anybody else? Okay, I know that everything I said was really not so fun, but I will say this. I am not a member of your community. I stand next to you, but I don't go out there with a camera. And I will say this, I know it's discouraging, but it's necessary. This revolution is not going to be televised, but by God, it will be photographed. So this is necessary, and I know it sucks that some of the photos that you put out there are going to get pulled down and used, but maybe that fair use is a good thing, because maybe the right publications will pick it up, and maybe this is just a way to further the movement, and maybe the way you further the movement, maybe furthering the movement will come back around and karma will come back on the side of the photographers. So please don't lose that fighting spirit, because we need you out there. Like, as someone who goes to protests like 4 or 5 times a week, we need to see what's happening out there, because mainstream media is not reporting it, local media is not reporting it, you are reporting it. And that's powerful. Everything you do is powerful. So yeah, this is a know your rights, but also know your power. Yeah? Know your power.
I had one quick question before we close out. Is there any, I guess, as we're seeing things go and change throughout the year with laws on all spectrums, at least for photographers or for documenters or for anybody that's covering these events, do you see any laws changing in the future as things are continuing to develop?
You know what? This is such a fast-moving industry, and what is kind of interesting is because it's a cross-section of art, media, and technology. Like, technology is really kind of a kicker here, because, I mean, like I said, social media is really what's driving a lot of the change in the laws right now. So I do see laws changing, but I can't really say in what direction. Like for now, it seems like they're not on the side of like independent freelance journalists, but you know, I'm going to bring it back to the movement. Like this movement is also elevating a lot of those perspectives, and if enough of those perspectives get elevated, maybe that will be what changes things.
Awesome. Cool. Let's close out.
Thank you.
Switch your spots.
Yeah.
We're doing the outro and the
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Diana, for being here, for giving us and sharing a little bit of your knowledge. Thank you guys all for coming by. Also, you guys all have been doing a tremendous job at photographing the shitstorm that's happening in Los Angeles. You know, with these streets, we're out there during the beginning days of what, 8/27, or what is it, June 27th, May 27th.
May 27th.
Yeah.
29th.
And you know,
Y'all captured
we've
me
all
getting
been
shot.
through stuff, and we've all seen so many things. But you know, it's beautiful to see how you said, Mike, earlier. You know, the diversity that's in here, and you know, again, these are the people that are putting in that effort to making sure that our future gets to know what actually went down. So if you guys want to see the full workshop again, we will be doing an edit and putting it together and putting it up on YouTube. And if you guys want a email sent to you guys, just DM us your email at contact@thestreetsmag.com. Check it out. Thank you for coming. Bye.
Cool.